Well, welcome and good late morning to each and every one of you. Welcome to Texas! Woo! Let me just ask, I'm going to have to do this because I'm just so proud to be a Texan. I want to know who in this audience is from Texas. Shout out! Woo! This panel is going to be about growing strong in Texas, but we wanted to first of all thank you so much for coming today. My name is Hannah Gurji, and I have the privilege of being the Senior Fellow at the Opportunity Youth Forum, and my great job, is to work with the Texas Opportunity Youth Network. Who's that? Who's toying? Raise your hand if you're toying. Woo! Woo! That's right. All right. I also want to honor the poem that we just heard from Langston Hughes, Let America Be Great Again. For his words, though they were written in 1935, y'all, they ring true here in this state today. We have in Texas a tale of two states. On the one hand, over the last 2 decades, our economy has grown at unprecedented levels. In fact, our gross domestic product is over $2 trillion, which exceeds our nation's neighbor, Canada, okay? 1/4 of all U.S. exports leave from ports in the state of Texas. And our graduation rates, our high school graduation rates over the last decade have increased significantly. And when you look at our post-secondary enrollment, we have seen really promising trends. When you think about that Langston Hughes poem, the American dream as our dominant culture has defined it, seems to be alive and well in the state of Texas. On the other hand, and also in the Langston Hughes poem, huge swaths of our 30 million residents do not get to participate in our economy, either through lack of access or lack of preparation. Even as our education outcomes have improved, we know that there are system inequities that have led to gaps along race, ethnicity lines, along gender, and along income. For example, across the state, we experience gaps in our support systems that result in lower graduation rates for our Black and our Latino males. And since the pandemic, the learning loss has exacerbated those gaps and actually wiped out the gains we made in post-secondary enrollment, especially for our community colleges. Increasingly, too, and importantly, there's a rhetoric of fear that infiltrates the language of our lawmakers in this state, and it is leading to legislation that would ban organizations who seek to encourage strategies that support diversity, equity, and inclusion, that would punish our medical professionals who are trying to serve our young people who do not adhere to cultural norms around gender, that would restrict and sanitize what our students learn about history and our social sciences, and would further marginalize our immigrant community. But, and this is what this panel is about, there is light between the tension in these two tales of Texas. Today's panel is going to showcase that light and that promise. Examples of programs that currently help our opportunity youth, our underemployed adults, our low-income families achieve the dreams that they have on their terms and for their sense of purpose. These are programs that feature strategies to empower and address the whole person, that help to develop the new generation of community leaders, that are aligned to the demographics, the changing demographics of our state. These programs have focused on a practice and a rhetoric of welcome, opportunity, love, responsibility, and commitment, cultivating in our youth and our young leaders a sense of belonging and well-being. In a nutshell, and hats off to our incredible panel earlier today, it is a rhetoric and practice of healing. Today we're going to begin our conversation at its heart, and we're going to start by listening to the story of one of our young leaders, Montoya Thomas. We'll then hear from Michael Lofton, CEO and President of the African American Youth Harvest Foundation here in Austin, Texas. Joseph Caesar, founder and executive director of the Legacy Institute for Financial Education in Deep East Texas, Lufkin to be exact.
That's right.
Dr. Daniel King, CEO of Education Service Center 1, and also former superintendent of FAR San Juan and Hidalgo ISDs down in the Rio Grande Valley. And Angel Lerma, special projects manager at the Next Level Re-Engagement Center in San Antonio. Each will share their unique approach in navigating between these two realities in the state of Texas, focusing on individual agency, creating a sense of belonging, and working alongside our opportunity youth and our young adults as they find their paths and their sense of purpose. Please join me in welcoming Montoya Thomas as she shares a little bit about her story.
My name is Montoya Thomas. I'm 26 years old. My pronouns are she, her. I am from Houston, Texas, and I am a part of the Texas Network of Youth Services. As a member of the Texas Emerging Leaders Board, that is a youth board for young people with systems involvement. And so I was in foster care for 15 years. I entered at 5 years old, and I aged out. I transitioned out of the foster care system as well.
Yeah. And how big was your file, your case file, when you found it? Tell me a little bit about that.
So I requested my case file 2 years ago, and I received it, and I opened it. It was 5,000 pages. Yeah. Luckily, it was electronic, so I didn't have to go through a book. It was very eye-opening to know, to get reflect over my past and where I am today. Yes, it's a case file, but it doesn't define who I am.
That's right. Woo! I got my tissue. So tell us a little bit about your education journey and how some of the struggles you had to go through as a foster youth might have affected that education journey.
So my educational journey, when going to the community college, it's expected like, oh, you get 2 years and then you graduate. Well, I didn't go through that process. Like I went through community college, and it was a longer process because of the obstacles of being homeless and still trying to take the bus. And I didn't have a car at the moment, and my foster mom, she really didn't take me, so I had to find other alternatives to make sure I succeed today. And educational-wise, I was borderline at a GPA of 2.1. But luckily, I graduated last Friday with a GPA of 2.5.
Yeah. And how has that affected, how has both getting your education and some of what you've been through affected your career choices, what career you want to go in, and how you started on your career journey, how you've started on it?
Well, as I went through like the foster care system, and it was like constant instability because moving from place to place. So I noticed that I had an instability in my workplace because, yes, like I would find a job that paid well, but it didn't give me the hours. Or if I did have the hours, the pay wasn't well, so I was constantly like playing catch up to take care of my hygiene and my basic needs and making sure I keep a roof over my head. In 2018, I was homeless because I didn't have like a backup plan because my apartment wasn't ready. And so with that being said, like I was penalized at work because of what was going on at home, and I couldn't focus or sleep at night. So it really impacted me, and it's still impacting me now, but I'm still pushing through.
That's right. That's right. As Dr. Sean Jenright says, you are understanding what that felt like, but it does not define you, right? It does not define you. So if you were to give some advice to a young person who might be a little bit earlier in their journey, what would be the advice that you would give to them, do you think?
You are not alone. Your trials now will be a testimony in your future.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Montoya. Thank you.
Great job.
So the programs that we have here, these are all programs that are really designed to help address some of what you heard are the system breakdowns that Montoya experienced as a young person growing strong here in the state of Texas. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump to the next slide, which is going to invite Michael Lofton to talk a little bit about the African American Youth Harvest Foundation here in Austin and what programs you have in place to really help folks like Montoya. I'm going to also hand this over to you. The big green arrow is what you want to point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much. And first and foremost, I want to commend you on your journey and keep moving forward because let nobody stop you. Because you know what? You have earned it, you know what? And you have the ability to go out and change somebody else at the same time you move and meet your career opportunities. And congratulations on your graduation as well.
Thank you.
So, and then once again, I am very happy to be here. My name is Michael Lofton, and I am the founder and executive director for the African American Youth Harvest Foundation. A little bit about me before I tell you about the Harvest Foundation, of which I started that in 2007. I'm a native Austinite. I went to area middle schools. I went to college. I went to school for business and real estate. And after succeeding in my career aspirations in real estate, I did work in corporate America for about 20 years. And that was just some things that I saw in corporate America that I didn't like. I just didn't like the institutional racism. I just didn't like the structural racism. And I wanted to do something about it. And so rather than just being stuck in a job, whereas I saw tons of discrimination, I said, you know what, let me step out in the community because I was seeing a number of things that was happening to our young boys, our young girls in the area of middle schools and high schools. What bothered me most of all was the fact that our kids, black and brown, were excelling in the wrong direction. And I wanted to find out more about what was going on, and I wanted to be able to see what I could do to make a change in our community. So with that being said, I took a look at the area middle schools, I took a look at the area high schools, and I just saw a number of things as it relates to, our kids dropping out, high suspension rates. There was so many different things that I felt that we in the community need to come together to figure out what we need to do about it. So in 2007, but first let me just back up to just share with you one note. In the beginning, and to understand the problem, I had a TV talk show, the Michael Lofton Talk Show. I had a talk show for 20 years. And it was to provide a platform for the community so that they could come in and talk about all of the injustices, but also I wanted to highlight all of the great things that was going on in our community. Because too often, too many times, you see on the mainstream media, things that are not doing good, kids that can run fast, jump high, sports, and our kids going to prison. I wanted to highlight a lot of other positive things that was going on. So in 2007, I decided to launch a series of conferences, African American Men and Boys Conferences, African American Women and Girls Conferences. because I wanted to understand, I wanted to hear from the kids themselves. You know, I could be on TV talking about it, you know, for the next 10 or 15 years, but I wanted to roll up my sleeves so I could be a part of the solution. So in hosting these conferences on a monthly basis, let me just share with you, because I'm moving fast because I have a lot to share with you. We had conferences on a monthly basis for 4 years. We did 48 consecutive conferences. At each one of these conferences, we had to the tune of 400, 600, 800 participants at each one of these conferences. These conferences were not designed to hear me speak, but it was designed to come together. We had workshops for elementary school kids, middle school, high school, boys, girls. What we wanted to do was to understand the problem. You know, there's data everywhere, but I wanted to find out what was going on in my community, what was going on here in Travis County. So at all of these conferences, we collected a lot of data. The reason why we had so many individuals coming to the conferences on a monthly basis, again, was not to hear me speak, because after each conference, we took a look at the surveys, we collected a lot of information. It told us about the gaps in resources, walk with me on this, about the gaps in resources in our community. And so after each conference, we took a look at what was needed, and we brought those resources to the next conference. Ultimately, by the time we got through 4 years of conferences, we had resources like mentoring, we had tutoring, we had mental health, we had substance abuse, we had employment, everything that was health care, I mean, you name it, everything that was an issue that the parents were having problems with, we brought those resources to those conferences. And at the end of the 4 years, you know, I met with my board, and one of the things my board said, you know, Michael, you know, these folks are coming, they need resources. So what we did was, we found a building, I'm gonna fast forward, we found a building that was 45,000 square feet. And this particular building, it was 35% occupied. I am happy to be able to share with you right now that the building that we have is 100% occupied, and we have all of those resources that were missing from what the community gave us input to. We now have all of those resources under one roof. I'm here to tell you, I'm happy to share with you that we now have over 25 Black nonprofits all under one roof. 25 Black nonprofits. We also have Black and brown, but I made a point of bringing in resources so that we could address those issues. Cultural connectivity is important. We have a Black men's health clinic. We have mentoring. We have mental health. We have substance abuse. You name it, we have every resource that one could possibly dream of. And let me just say this here. On a daily basis, even if you came by our resource center tonight, you'll find over 100 plus kids there. We have STEM, technology. I could talk to you about it. My staff brought some booklets here because I would love for you all to go online, take a look at our programming services that we offer, and I would ask that each one of you take a look at how you can create a one-stop shop wraparound resource center that provides all of the resources that typically families in poverty need, from food, clothing, shelter, you name it, healthcare. We have all of those resources under one roof, and so I am just happy to say that we are meeting the needs of the community, and we need one-stop shop resource centers around the United States, especially in the Black and brown communities, if we're ever going to pull them out. And I could talk about all of the various programs that we have as it relates to entrepreneur skills. I mean, you name it, so I could go on, but just wanted to share that.
And thank you so much. For those of you, many of you went on the Austin Black History Tour, and Michael Lofton would feature very strongly in the contemporary history that we have for our African American community in Austin. So thank you so much, Michael, for sharing that. And what I'd love to do is jump us over to Joe, because we're now taking a trip to East Texas, to a smaller community, one actually that is featuring around rural Texas. So I'm going to go ahead and invite you to share your response to the supports that Montoya and people like her might need.
Thank you, Hannah. And first of all, I commend Montoya. It's brave what you have done, and I'm looking forward to see what God is for you in the future. So thank you for sharing your story. And also Mr. Lofton, I looked up to him. I just met him a few days ago. But once I found out everything that his organization does, I see him as a future mentor. So I appreciate him being on the stage with me. My name is Joseph Caesar. I am originally from Houston, Texas. I didn't know a lot about investments. I grew up in a lower middle class household. We didn't talk a lot about investments. We didn't talk about real estate other than my parents rented my entire life. We owned nothing other than vehicles. And I interacted once I went to college with some individuals who had investments. They talked about annuities and stocks and bonds. This was like a foreign language to me. Especially my friends who I called back at home and said, hey man, did you hear anything about an annuity? And they had a blank face, just like I did. So my wife and I, we co-founded this organization, Legacy Institute for Financial Education. It started out as a Bible class at our church in Houston when we encountered a scripture, Matthew chapter 25, when it was dealing with the parable of the talents. I thought a talent was a skill or ability, but it was talking about money. And then one individual took 5 talents and multiplied it into 10 talents. So our students, when we started to share that with them, asked, how do you multiply money? And I said, that's a great question. Someone ought to be talking about this. So I asked the elders of the church for some time. They gave us a quarter, teach the kids about biblical principles of finance. After exhausting all of my time, we started working with the kids and on Saturdays. And there was the birth of the LIFE program, Legacy Institute for Financial Education. I became a full-time preacher in 2015. That's when we moved the organization from Houston to Lufkin, Texas. That's how I ended up there. When I hit the ground in Lufkin, it was a completely different environment. We didn't have a lot of black kids going to college. We didn't have a lot of minorities going to college in Lufkin. And our adults were not like the adults in Houston. In Houston, you cannot have a degree and still make a livable wage. But in Lufkin, Texas, that's a very different problem. So we had people that were 60 years old working at Sonic making less than minimum wage, hoping that someone remembered to give them a tip. So we realized that we can't teach financial literacy and how to budget, save, invest, and give without first teaching them how to get a job. So then we became a workforce development organization. So when you look at the logos on the slide, that really is a story about who we are. At the top, you see the parent organization, which we're all under one umbrella, Legacy Institute. That cross signifies that we have a biblically based approach. We don't evangelize. We do use the Bible like a textbook. For example, Proverbs 22:7 teaches the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is servant to the lender. If you don't like living like a slave, then stop getting into debt. So we have the Life Empowerment Fund at the top left. That is an emerging CDFI. We're going to talk about that in a second. We have the Bank On Deep East Texas Coalition, which we are the founding member and also the backbone organization for Bank On. We help individuals find safe and affordable bank accounts. Throughout Black and Hispanic history, we have historically not had good relationships with banks, stemming all the way back from the freedom of the slaves and the Freedmen's Bank. If you do some research on the Freedmen's Bank, I can give an entire presentation over that. Then we have our Financial Opportunity Center. We had a local funder and a partner in the TLL Temple Foundation who introduced us to the Local Initiatives Support Corporation, who helped provide us with a bundled services model. The 3 objectives that we have is to help our community improve their net income, improve their net worth, and improve their their FICO scores. So that is my primary responsibility with that program. We have the WAZO project because one of the things our young people, especially after COVID-19, our young people want to be entrepreneurs. They want to start their own businesses. WAZO is a Swahili word that means idea, thought, or creation. For those who are entrepreneurs, your WAZO is your business. Our Next Chapter program, that started out as a reentry program. We literally pick people up from prison and help them find a job on day one. That has turned into an apprenticeship program as well as a reentry program that plugs into our workforce development programs. Life Tech, you see there, is our IT industry recognized certification program. It is an apprenticeship. Students come in and they learn how to become IT professionals. That program has been funded from Microsoft Philanthropies, and we have produced, and I'm proud to say, within less than a year, we have produced more than 35 apprentices that have graduated and have achieved careers within IT. All of them are making more than livable wages. One of them moved to Dallas, and he's now making over $70,000 a year with no student loan debt and no college degree. So thank you, Dallas, for all of the work that you do for us. We have a community garden. The co-founder, my wife, she is here today. If you could please stand, Elena. She runs our Lufkin Urban Garden and Market. One of the things that exists is a food injustice in our communities. It's very easy to shop at McDonald's, but it's very difficult to find affordable, organically grown, locally produced food in our communities. Matter of fact, in the Black and Hispanic communities, growing your own food, that was not a secret back in the day. In rural Deep East Texas, families had gardens, and we've gotten away from that, and we are now victim and beholden to whatever is offered in the grocery store. We have no idea what type of DNA is in there, all the GMOs and chemicals they put in the products, and we are suffering from obesity, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, all those things that affect our pocketbook. So that is why eating healthy is important. And we just launched our carpentry program, which is just like Life Tech, called Life Build. Life Build, we have to get back to building our own properties and real estate. We are suffering from a shortage of carpenters in Deep East Texas, and I will be very transparent and say that I have attempted multiple times to hire some of the local contractors and have been burned. So we need professionals who have NCCER certifications. All of them come out with some type of certification. And as of April 3rd, we launched our first class with 15 students. We had our first student who is deaf, who just graduated with his NCCER core certification. Thank you. And it is important because we have open doors for all races. For those who have disabilities, we're going to try to find a way for them to be trained and for them to get into the workforce. All right? So this is a community picture. We've heard the term community of practice. At Legacy Institute, we have our own internal community of practice. Our organizations learn from each other, and you probably can't see that print. But just know that our organization is like a community within a community. I agree with Mr. Lofton, who has said that we need one-stop shops in the community where people don't have to go from organization to organization, searching and finding, scratching, digging, and clawing for the resources that they need. So when they come to our umbrella, they see a holistic approach to how we work with them. And I'll give you a couple of examples in a second. And for those things that we can't do well, we do outsource those to our partner organizations. So I want to share with you two stories. We have two individuals who graduated from Deep East Texas. The individual to your left, her name is Getthe Anderson. Her mother introduced her to us. Her mother was a Habitat for Humanity homeowner, which all Habitat for Humanity recipients in our community must go through our Financial Opportunity Center. This is her eldest daughter. She was graduating from Huntington High School. She had an identity crisis. She was black on her father's side and white on her mother's side, and when Barack Obama got elected, they asked her to stop acting so black. She wanted to become a civil rights attorney. So we tried to help her. My wife and I tried to help her. She was not able to get her paperwork to Howard University on time. So we encouraged her to go to Angelina College. While she was waiting to go to Angelina College, she enrolled in our Life Tech program. She became a client of the Financial Opportunity Center, and we helped her purchase her first car. We educated her about interest and what a loan was, what an origination rate was. She didn't know that. We educated her about her credit score. She understood that she could not qualify for preferential interest rates because she had no credit score, and her mother's credit score was shot because of a divorce. So now she is not just an FOC client, but she was a Life Tech graduate. She was our first Life Tech graduate. She is now a social media director for one of our local companies. And she is a recent graduate of Angelina College, and she is on her way to Texas Tech for pre-law, and she will become an attorney.
Woo!
Our next student to her right is Jalen. That is his mother that he's with. He is the eldest of her 7 children. They also are Habitat for Humanity homeowners. She went through our financial literacy course. She also helped in the WAZO project. She was on our BOB committee, our Black-Owned Business Day committee. Her son is a graduate of our Life Tech program. He is now a student at Prairie View A&M University, majoring in engineering. He is also a Life Empowerment Fund client. He wanted to build his credit while he was in college. So he was the first individual to get a credit builder savings account with our Life Empowerment Fund. And he's also a Financial Opportunity Center client. So in multiple aspects, using that holistic approach to impact these youth, that really is the answer. The school districts are not preparing these kids to buy a home. They're not preparing these kids to understand how to build their credit. They're not preparing these kids on how to get a loan properly. They're not preparing these kids on how to do a balance sheet, a budget, how to begin to invest. They're ill-equipped, and our organization, we're doing our very best to address these problems from a holistic approach. So thank you for the opportunity. Look forward for the rest.
Right. And I'll say, so we just heard how important education, like leveraging your education is, right? And that there are some challenges that we're facing in our education systems, the gaps that they're experiencing. Dr. King has taken this to heart, and the work that he has done has some extraordinary outcomes related to our public education system and how that can serve as not a barrier, but a lever and a bridge to the successful achievement of our young people. Dr. King, go ahead and tell us what about it.
Yes, good afternoon. In 2019, September 2019, I retired from a 42-year career in public education. So over the next few hours, I'll go over that history. But anyway, my last 2 stops, I spent 20 years as a superintendent of schools, 8 at a very small district, right on the border south of McAllen, right where one of the major bridges is that you see on the news all the time with the immigration issues and everything like that. And in that district, my title there, all means all. I had an opportunity to partner with some organizations, Educate Texas, the UT system, and so forth, to start an early college high school. And just to make a long story short, I loved it except for one thing. It was take a cohort of students from my 800-student high school, 100 students a year, and they would go off to the college, and my others would stay behind. And I kind of became known for being the stubborn guy because I said, I'm going to turn down this grant unless it's for all my kids. And the partners left, said, too bad. It was a Gates Foundation grant. They're like, that's not the Gates model. It's small school. It's this, that, and the other. I said, well, I'll do 2 small schools. I gave them all different ways to do it. I won't go through the whole story. Ultimately, a few months later, I got a call, and they said, okay, we're going to give this crazy guy a chance. And so we took this high school, 99% Latino and about 93, 94% low income, became the first comprehensive high school to convert into a wall-to-wall early college high school in the nation with great results. And I won't go into that too much. In 2007, I went into my I didn't know it was going to be my last gig, but I took a neighboring school district, over 10 times larger, over 30,000 students, that was in dire straits. As I was walking in the door, literally, I started 2 weeks early because 3 board members and the outgoing superintendent were arrested by the FBI for corruption. The dropout rate at that school was more than double the state average. The high schools were losing over 500 dropouts a year. The on-time graduation rate was 62%. All the high schools were failing federal standards. One of them was very close to being shut down. The original high school was being very close to shut down. And in the high schools were gang fights almost every day. Again, the community, 99% Latino, about 93% economically disadvantaged. As I was going in the door there and looking at what to do, the first problem I felt I needed to address was the dropout crisis. And so I began an initiative that I had started in Hidalgo, a much smaller district with only about a little over 3,000 students. And that said, you don't lose anybody. And so in PSJ is the acronym for Far San Juan Alamo. I started that summer and kicked off an initiative, Countdown to Zero, meaning our goal is 0 dropouts. We're going to looking for everybody that we've lost. And I targeted, first of all, I found that there were 234 seniors from the year before that had not graduated due to exit exams, or Texas had the 4x4 at the time, so that 4th year of math and 4th year of physics was giving them problems. Historically, I looked, and most of those seniors, they made it all the way to their senior year, never graduated. So I was bound to determine that the ones that finished that year right before I came in, we were going to start there. That should be low-hanging fruit. They made it to their senior year. So we started going out to get them. I knew we could do that because I'd been a high school principal and I knew how to do that. And the response started coming back. Almost all of them were saying yes. And so, they were happy somebody cared. So now I was like, where do I put them? I've got these overcrowded high schools with gang fights every day with a high dropout rate. And some of the staff told me, sir, we've tried before to bring some back, but they usually pop right out. So I thought about it, I said, I'm going to open a high school just for them. So I came up with an idea kind of in August, and I said, down in the valley, I would have loved to partner with industry, but we didn't have much major industry. I wanted to look for, I knew these young people needed a hook, employment or something. Having been a high school principal and brought back young people like this before, I knew as soon as they took their test, you'd lose them again. They'd leave because they weren't going to stay in school waiting for the results. They got other things to do with life. So I needed something to keep them in school. So I approached the community college and said, would you work with me on a dual enrollment program for dropouts? Luckily, progressive president, she said yes. She said, Danny, when do you want to start? September of next year or January? I said, ma'am, we need to start September 1. This was like second week of August. And I said, because we're gonna lose these kids. So I called all the board members. I said, we're opening a new high school for dropouts. They're like, where? Our district's overcrowded. I go, I don't know where. Who's gonna be the principal? I don't know. Who's gonna teach? I don't know, but we're gonna do it. And we didn't make September 1, but we made mid-September. So it took us about 5-6 weeks to open it up. So we opened up this high school. We actually got 223 of the 234 seniors back in school. 49 graduated that December, and we kept on going. In the meantime, as I was going through, I was looking through, Texas legislature meets in odd years. I was going through all the laws, and I found a weird phrase in there, something about attendance accounting for people up to their 26th birthday. I had never heard of that. I've been in the business a long time, right? And so I called some experts who called TA, and everybody said, well, we didn't know that was in there. And I said, so can I do that? Well, I guess, So for January, then I said, wow, I'll go after all the ones that didn't finish all the other years. So we put billboards all over the community, PSAs. We went all around the community, and we had this big billboard. You didn't finish high school, start college today. And so in January, we had about 350 now, 18 to 26-year-olds in this school. And so just kind of to go from there, we teamed up with Workforce. We made sure they had daycare support. We'd pick up somebody with a child, take them to the daycare of their choice, and then bus them on to school daycare support. Career counseling. We helped them with the college come in and help them choose what they might want to get a certificate in, a degree in, different things like that. And so we were off running and rolling. Over my 12 years there, we graduated about 4,000 18 to 26-year-olds. we took the dropout rate from more than double the state average to a third of the state average. In 2 years, we flipped it to half. And what we did is we didn't do community walk, we did grunt detective work. And we go find that kid, and mama says he moved out with his girlfriend. Well, who's his girlfriend? Well, I don't know. I was mad, and I didn't ask him. So then we go call his friends, and we ask his friends, who's his girlfriend? And then we go find him. In other cases, well, he left the community, but I think he works such, then we go to the employer. He's out of state. Well, then we trace him down out of state. I don't care if they're in Louisiana or whatever. We try to get them back in school there and tell them, hey, if you come back, we can help you if you come back. And so ultimately, we got from losing over 500 students a year. We also worked down through the system, and we did a lot of reform within the high schools and the middle schools to really address these young people's needs. And ultimately, we brought it down from, I wish we could say we got to 0, but we brought it down to losing about 70 or 80 a year from 500. So that's a huge drop.
Yep.
We took our on-time graduation rate from 62% to 92% on time. We took our ultimate graduation rate to 97%, because if they didn't graduate, I don't care if it took them 5 more years. We just go after them, go after them, go after them. We took a lot of hits because the state, now it's changed, but at that time, the state, if you went and recovered a dropout, the next year you got dinged again and again and again. Well, that's okay. I'll get dinged 5 times on the kid, but he got a diploma. So there's no such thing. We were talking about finance a minute ago. Banks, sometimes they write off bad debt. Well, you don't write off kids.
That's right.
You don't. And you were one of the things you said very quickly, but I think we should hone in on it, and I think it's in your presentation here, is that in the state of Texas, historically, our school districts have been disincentivized from pursuing our dropouts because it will count negatively in their accountability if that student drops out again or fails to make proper progression.
Yes.
Well, Dr. King just happens to know the commissioner of Texas Education Agency, and he started talking to him about this challenge. You want to tell him the results of what that is?
Yes, I will get to that slide. I just want to mention a couple of things. One, when the law that I found out later that the language I found in the law for over 21, which was always the rule in Texas, right, and a lot of states, was put in there by a legislature who was thinking of adults who could come in an hour or 2 a week in the evening for tutoring and mix it. He didn't intend anybody to open a school with it. Luckily, I didn't know what he thought, and I knew what we needed. And so we did that, and the next session, the legislature doubled down. For 2 years, I was a little nervous, like, are they going to say this is too expensive? And what if this goes statewide and it'll cost the state millions and millions? Will they shut it down? But no, they doubled down on it. And I will mention that some of these young people went on to get bachelor's, associates, certificates. Others are high school diploma, but it moved them on. Also, gang fights died out within 2 years. Crime in the community went down. All of these things because of engaging these young people. And then I'll mention 2 more things. We did early college at scale, massive, most ambitious in the nation. My last year, out of a little over 2,000 graduates, 500 had associate degrees, and 70-some% had college hours, including many of the opportunities. We opened an early college high school for teenage moms, and then we did some really unique career and placement and career pathway work for the severely disabled, and that which was kind of my pride and joy at the end. But anyway, all means all. So now today, I told you I retired 3 years ago. I was doing consulting and different things and trying to set up a nonprofit to do some of this work. The pandemic, of course, got in the way. I got asked to come back and take charge of Region 1. Initially, I really didn't intend to, but when I saw the impact of the pandemic, I thought maybe I can help schools. Well, now I've been 1 year in the saddle. You can calculate my age, 42-year career, 3 years retired, and now I'm back in. I'm 1 year in the saddle. I'm on year one of my next 42-year stint, okay? So now what I've come up with is for the Regional Service Center to do things that service centers never do and have never done. And I've already communicated all this with the commissioner. He's pretty excited too. But so I'm going to the districts and saying, a lot of our districts, and really all around the state, they're concerned. They lost enrollment due to competition, due to the pandemic, due to families having less babies, due to all these different kind of things. And I'm like, hey, you want to increase per pupil funding? You want to increase enrollment? You want to capitalize on state policy and close your graduation rates? You want to get more money through the CCMR indicator? You want to boost your entire community? Either partner. You don't have to partner with me. We can show you how, or you can partner with us. So down at the bottom, there's 3 arrows that cover the changes in the law. By the way, I will mention my last 2 years. You know, a couple of times I've run into scenarios like my 18 to 26-year-old high school. One year, the legislative session was almost finishing, and I was told, your campus is going to fail. And it had always done well. We had visitors from all over the nation. I'm like, why is it going to fail? So staff looked it up. They go, oh my goodness. To be in the alternative accountability system, it says you have over 50% of the students have to be at risk. I go, well, they're all at risk. Well, they use the federal definition, which says ages whatever to 21 in Title I, and a lot of the kids are over that. Luckily, the legislature was in session. Luckily, I've been around long enough to know some people, and we were able to get, in conference committee, get it tagged to a bill to change the definition at risk for these campuses. My last 2 years, this campus that's done all this tremendous work got an F both years. I went to the commissioner, I called the commissioner the first time, I went to the commissioner. What's wrong with this picture? The reason it went, Texas had made a very positive change in the accountability system, but nobody had thought of how it would affect this kind of school. So the change they made was to put major emphasis on growth instead of just the flat score that students make. Well, they had had their psychometricians work several years preparing for this. They had worked out how to scientifically and be able to defend measuring growth from 3rd grade math to 4th grade, from 8th grade math to algebra in high school and all that. Guess what they had never thought about? How to measure growth when the student retakes the same test. And I was like, Commissioner, I can do that if he made a 30 the first time and the 40 the next time he grew, you know? But they needed psychometricians. He said, Danny, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. You don't. I said, Commissioner, schools are bailing. The few schools that are doing this work, they're bailing out because of this. And he's like, we'll fix it. The next year I got an F again. My board wasn't happy on that. It wasn't the district. It was at one campus. I called the commissioner. In fact, I went to see him in person. I said, Commissioner, I'm going to make you give me an F every year till you fix this, because we're not going to stop doing this. Ultimately, they've fixed it now. So they've removed some of the penalties. So now there's a new, starting this year with this year's accountability, there's a new growth measure for retesters. So if you're in Texas, in your communities, there's no excuse for your school district not to be doing this. They have empty buildings, fill them up with they get full state funding like for any other student. So you're talking about $7,000, $8,000 a year per pupil. You wish you had that funding, right? So your school districts can do that work. Dropouts only count against you once, which takes away a long-standing penalty in the state for dropouts. There's all kinds of attendance, calendar attendance accountings, flexible year, flexible schedule, etc. You know, I recommend to them heavy CT focus, IBC, dual credit options. CCMR, if you're not from Texas, college, career, and military readiness. There's great incentives by the state. You get financial incentives for every graduate that scores a yes on that indicator. And if they're special ed, at risk, different things, you get like double the money. So there's no reason in the world not to do that work. Partnering with community-based organizations, nonprofits, Regional Service Center can be one. In Texas, the lower funded districts struggle a lot of times. Charter schools are funded at the midpoint of all the schools in the state. And again, school funding is very complex. I won't get into it, but there's 1,100 school districts in the state. And just suffice it to say that the funding formula is very complex. It takes into consideration a lot of factors. So there's the best funded school district in the state, and there's 1,100 best or worst funded. Charters get the midpoint. If you partner with a 501(c) and so forth and go through an application with TA and everything, a nonprofit or a university or a service center and so forth, or a community agency can contract to run a school or run a program for a school district and get that charter school funding.
That's right.
And so that's called an 1882 partnership. So we're going to be blowing that up region-wide. We're going to be blowing up the dropout recovery work and blowing up the model of what service centers are all about, which is more than service, but actually creating pilots, best practices, and so forth.
So thank you so much, and I just want to point out like the systems change work that Dr. King just did. So he was very humble about it, but we really need to point that out, that when he said he talked to the commissioner and he said, I'll take the F until you change it, the commissioner changed it, y'all. They changed it, and so now our school districts have the opportunity to create these partnerships with community-based organizations, or to undertake these processes themselves, or partner with a higher ed institution to really double down on the work around dropout recovery. So thank you, Dr. King, for the work that you have done. It is just extraordinary. So what we've heard, I want to just sort of contextualize what we've heard so far as we lean into our last presentation. So we have heard around work around a grassroots focus on building from the ground up, from the people up, this incredible resource center from the African American Youth Harvest Foundation. From the Legacy Institute for Financial Education, we hear how a community-based organization can serve as a hub for life-changing services within Deep East Texas, extraordinary gift. We have now heard from how an education institution can serve, and the institutions themselves, those systems that are slated to be or described as being barriers, can actually be the agents of change themselves, right? And Dr. King was absolutely symbolizing and representing that. Now what we're going to do is hear how a city, a public entity, can do the very same thing through the work of the Next Level Re-Engagement Center and what Angel Lerma has to say. So Angel, take it away. He's got his own fan club here.
Shout out to our Next Level youth participants who are here with us today. But no, thank you so much for having me here. Y'all are doing such amazing work in your community, and so it's so great to hear all your stories as well. But really, I'm excited to be here today to share a little bit about what the Next Level Youth Opportunity Center is doing and the work that we're doing in San Antonio. The Next Level Opportunity Center is really a re-engagement center in San Antonio that operates in partnership with communities and schools, Goodwill Industries, and the city of San Antonio. And we do have braided funding from United Way, City of San Antonio, and Northside Independent School District. We actually have two locations. We have a Next Level West and a Next Level North. But really at our Next Level Re-Engagement Center, the model really consists of having life coaches and education coaches who are both paired with our young participants. But really, before I get into the details of that, like our conversation really started back in 2018. So we're fairly new to the work of Opportunity Youth. Our doors opened in 2019, but in 2018, it took us about a year to really have the conversations and kind of understand who Opportunity Youth were. Really what it started was an initiative that our presiding judge, Bull, our presiding municipal court judge, Bull, was really seeing a lot of young people coming into his courthouse, or into the courthouse really, in the courtroom, trying to find alternative options. He was meeting them and he was saying, you know, truancy court, traffic violations are landing them here. I want to give them a different option, but I just don't know what programs exist or what's out there that I can do something different. So with the city of San Antonio, we're actually a funder of a lot of nonprofits in our community. We're one of the largest funders of nonprofits in San Antonio. Because we don't have a lot of like the big companies and private donors, so really our municipality kind of plays some of that, takes up some of that space in that role. But through those conversations, we did an inventory of all of the programs that we had in the city, our youth serving programs. And what we were seeing was that all of our programming was really being invested to after-school programs or in-school programming. And so we really weren't supporting programs to serve those that were not working or not in school. And so then that's when we started having questions. We started having, talking to other communities and learning from best practices, and that's really when we learned, got connected with the Aspen Institute, National League of Cities, the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas back then, and we really learned that there was 35,000 opportunity youth in our community. And so we found that alarming. We wanted to do something about it. Lucky for us, we were able to put a package together, present it to our city council. They were receptive and put us right away in the funding cycle that fiscal year to open a re-engagement center. So we were really excited about the momentum, and I'm telling you, we got funding on October 1st, and we opened our re-engagement center on February 14th.
Woo!
And I think we might have done it a little differently now that I think back, but it was a lot of work to really get all of those pieces together. But it was really exciting, and so Next Level basically came about because our municipal courts really wanted to provide an alternative option for young adults. And so really the way the model works is that we have a life coach and an education coach paired with a young person. Because when we were opening our doors, we talked to youth. We talked to youth and foster care systems. We talked to youth that were homeless, talked to the most vulnerable young people in our communities. And so when we learned what they needed was basically support with mental health, education, childcare, transportation, housing. So you're talking about basic needs here. And so we realized that we also we couldn't just have a staff person that said, this is how you enroll in school. We needed to make sure that we had the support system in place to make sure they were successful. So that's why our model consists of each young adult being paired with a life coach that will then help them address basic needs and remove barriers, while their education and career coach becomes basically a content expert in all of our education options in San Antonio. Then they sit with the young adult and develop a plan to get them enrolled into work or school or reach whatever goals they'd like. So we really approach it from a holistic view of not only meeting your education and career goals, but then the life coaches are also working on their life goals. You want to get a driver's license, you want to earn a car, you want to learn how to budget, you name it, we're working with them to make sure that they're successful. So through that work, we were really excited because during the first beginning of our year, we actually also started a pilot program of getting young people into post-secondary options. So as our coaches were working through, as we're opening the doors, we're figuring it out. Right? We're figuring out the systems, what pathways exist. And so what we realized was that there wasn't a smooth transition or a better option for young adults getting into post-secondary. At that moment in time, we also had our Alamo Promise program. And so it's very similar to a lot of other Promise programs in the nation where young adults basically are able to earn an associate's tuition free after applying for financial aid. And in our community, it was really that, okay, you have to go to a certain high school or graduate from a certain high school in order to be eligible for this program. So then, of course, that meant that our non-traditional students didn't have access to those services. So then there we go. We have another conversation with the president of the Alamo colleges. We have bring in decision makers, bring in our city leaders. And then we start having that conversation. What will it look like if we're able to connect non-traditional students to this Promise program? And there wasn't a lot of differences. We worked through what that would look like. And with support with JP Morgan Chase, we were actually able to pilot a program where we could enroll 20 participants into Alamo Promise. And that was our very first cohort. We aimed for 20. We landed at about 10. But that's okay because I'm excited to say that actually this Thursday, 6 of those 10 are going to be graduating from the first cohort. Yeah. And while those numbers aren't large, they're important because they're young people's lives. And so from that pilot program, we were then able to expand our work. And so that now city leaders said, you know what, this is a proven model that works. Let's expand it. So now Next Level is able to provide access to Alamo Promise programs to any participant that enrolls in our program that wants to attend a post-secondary program. So through that work, we realized partnerships are important. We need to have all the right people in place and all the right partners in place to make this work and to make sure young people are successful. And so fortunately for us, like being a part of the city, we basically were able to develop a funding stream for opportunity youth work in our community. So the city of San Antonio really is the backbone of opportunity youth work. And so through these initiatives, we're actually able to not only provide funding to nonprofits to do work in this space, we're also actually creating an opportunity youth collaborative where we bring nonprofit partners to the table to say, what are the gaps? What do we need to do? And not only are we doing that to share best practices and improve referral streams, we're wanting to now kind of working on a place where we're going to take Next Level, not just as a re-engagement center, but really as kind of a brand with pillars of expectation to say, if you're going to be joining our work, then you need to have a trauma-informed care approach. Join us in doing better. Let's have a smoother referral system in place. Let's have conversations on case management to make sure they're supported. We can't do it alone with funding from one agency. We know it. And so we just wanted to make sure that everyone came together, so that's currently in the works for us. I want to also highlight that we do have also a partnership with Roy Moss, which is our homeless services provider in San Antonio. And they actually manage our transitional housing, which is called the Annie Laurie House. So we're able to offer transitional housing to those support systems. And again, blended funding with the city of San Antonio, right? We have different grants and different opportunities, and we're trying to bring all the pieces together. But through all of that work, we're excited to say that we're moving in the right direction. And so we have proven success, we have proven success stories. And so then this past July, we were actually able to open a second location, second next level center. We were able to basically partner with Northside Independent School District. Through the pandemic, like y'all had mentioned, so many students had been dropping out of school, thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids that are just needing a better opportunity. And so I'm going to say, there's this young man named Nathan that we met when we first, I will never forget him. I hope that one day he learns that he's the reason that we actually opened this center. But there was a young man named Nathan that we met a long time ago when we first opened the original Next Level location. An SAPD officer wanted to provide him with a different option. He didn't want to give him a ticket, so then he connected them to us on our very first day of opening our doors. We worked with him. Unfortunately, he had a lot of different life challenges and isn't in our program now. But recently, I want to say earlier last year, like in January, a board member from NISD actually met Nathan at a gas station. And he said, "What's going on, young man? What do you need? Why are you here?" And he's, "What school did you go to?" So then he found out that he went to a Northside Independent School District school. And then he said, and so then that board member heard a little bit of his story. Board member brings it back and says, "We need to do better by our kids." And so what are we doing for our young adults that have dropped out, that are not in school? We need to do something about it. So through our conversations, we were able to partner with Northside Independent School District, which is the largest school district in San Antonio. We have about 19 in our city, but they are one of the largest ones. And so they were basically saying, you know what, we want to do better. We want to do right by our kids. So they basically opened a second next level location at one of their family engagement centers. They were already providing services to the community, like access to food, pre-K services, case management. And so it was important for us in our model to also open our re-engagement centers and community centers that already exist, where there's already young people coming and other community organizations to connect them to other resources. But yeah, so we were able to open a second location. And we have been really making progress there. I want to put it in the universe too, that we're now having conversations about opening a mobile unit. So we're hoping that comes, I'm saying it, I'm putting it into the universe now, manifesting it. But we're working through opening a mobile unit to really then try to meet our community members where they're at. There's different sides of town that need more attention, and opening a brick and mortar location all the time isn't always the most ideal thing. So what can we do to be innovative? We know virtual services also work. So that's something that we're exploring with now. But it has been a really great opportunity to kind of share some of this with you. And I know we're running out of time.
That's okay. No, you're doing great. And let me just say that these programs are emblematic of many, many programs that we have across the state of Texas that are doing this excellent work. But they happen to be extraordinary models. So I want to thank all of you all for your vision and for the vision that is now actually changing the lives of young people and changing the systems that actually push those young people out in the first place. So thank you all for that. Let's have a round of applause for them before we jump into questions. Yeah. So we have, what we wanted to do is make sure you guys had a really good grounding in what these different programs were. And then what we wanted to do was invite first our young people, because if you heard, one of the presiding themes was that you went first to the young people to ask what the needs were. So that happened in each one of these. That was the first question that was asked. And for some, like with Michael Lofton, it took a long time and a series of conversations, a series of community meetings to really drive and bring to the top the key needs that the community had, right? So really starting there. What we're going to do is we're going to now turn the conversation. I'm going to invite Montoya to see if there were any questions or a question that you wanted to ask of our panelists, and then I'm going to invite you guys to share your thoughts related to that question. And then, Before we jump into that, I did want to say, we have before us in the front of the room, we have our Texas Emerging Leaders Board. If you can please stand. These are our young leaders that represent the state of Texas, and it's managed and directed by the unbelievable Texas Network of Youth Services, TNOYS, and Kennedy Quintanilla in particular, so thank you all for this work. They're also we're gonna invite them to ask some questions too. They may have some questions of our panelists. Once they've asked their questions, we'll shift it over so that if you all have questions, oh my goodness, we'll make sure that we get you to answers to your questions as well. So we're going to start with you, Montoya. Do you have some questions?
Yes. So my question is, our last plenary session focused on the 4 pivots in the transformative power of hearing. Can you share experiences in your journey or program work in which you've seen transformative power in action?
Sure, I can. I don't mind jumping in. Is the mic on?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
the mic's on.
okay. I don't mind jumping in. You know, I had an incident, not an incident, but a situation to where I had a young man that was in high school, and he came to me. He couldn't talk to his principal about it because he was contemplating suicide. The reason why he was contemplating suicide, because his mother was on drugs. The boyfriend that was in the house was selling drugs, and they was taking his lunch money, you know, just all sorts of things, and he was just fed up to hear. And I never will forget when he told me that. I said, you know what? You're not going to commit suicide, but here's what we're going to do. I went and got with the constable. We went over and we talked to the boyfriend. He moved out. We got with the mother. We got her in drug treatment, and the young man was able to finish and go on to school. And I never will forget, 3 or 4 years later, after he finished high school, I received an award from AISD, and that particular award was presented to me by this young man. Of course, he didn't commit suicide. The bottom line is he went on to Texaschildren in Houston, got his master's and PhD in social work. So I'm saying that to say, you can have an impact. Our kids are traumatized. They're going through some things. There have been many kids that have come to us contemplating suicide. That's why we have so many case managers and social workers and LPCs in there working with our kids, because when kids are traumatized, when their lights are off and they have no food, or somebody's incarcerated, it really affects that child, and us being able to have an impact, to be able to understand what that child needs. And trauma-informed care, we have a trauma-informed care specialist who works with individual kids and the families, both the youth and the parent. It's important to not just focus on the child, but to focus on the entire household, because our kids are concerned. They have stress, and that stress that they have is focused on a loved one in their household more so than themselves. And so being able to address the needs of all of the individuals in that household is very important if you want that one child to succeed. So working with them is very important, because we see folks coming in every week talking about suicide. That's a crisis. Something has to be done about it.
It sure is. It sure is. And I think when we listen very often to our young people, one of the biggest things that they say is the need for mental health supports and the mental health services. So thank you for highlighting that. Were there any other stories you guys would like to share around this transformative power?
You know, for many years, I've kind of focused on that expression, all means all. About 2014, 2015, one of the district, one of the special education supervisors came to me and said, Dr. King, we're not doing enough. There's not enough depth and quality transition program for special education students, especially those that stay the extra year. So we're talking about that are usually in self-contained settings, and typically they'll stay till age 21, which is the length at which the special ed laws have established. And so she said, it was a 4 large high school district with some small special purpose schools. She said, can I take them to your adult campus from all the high schools together and start setting up a program for her. And so I said yes, and so she did that, and I was visiting and everything, and it really started hitting me that we hadn't lived up to the all means all. So I brought her in, and I said, you know what, we need to do way more than that. And so I asked her to go to the community college and meet with their continuing education program and develop multiple career pathways for these young people. And so we built a program called Pathways to Independence. And so developed the curriculum and everything else for different pathways and getting different skills and getting, and then the way we set it up too was that we got employers that would partner. And in their first year in the program, they would get basic job readiness, get some exposure. By the second year, they rotate with different employers so they get to see what they want. Because a lot of times, these kind of young people, a lot of times parents or school or somebody says, you go work at McDonald's or whatever the case may be, right? But let them try, a pastry shop, a floral shop, a credit union, different things and see what they like. And then their last year then partner with the employer to prepare them for that. At the same time, in the middle of that, just kind of stumbled on something again. I think when you're working on something, doors open. And there was this old home on a 1 acre lot with kind of old growth native habitat on it. And it just kind of a light went on, and we took that property and converted it into a home for life skills for these young people that are in their last years of preparing, where they got to work in a real home, and we brought in the nutrition teachers to teach them how to cook. We brought in the ag teachers, put a greenhouse. They did all the gardening, building, could go on and on and on. Those kids, those young adults just lit up so much. Their parents came in, what are you doing? Like they don't just want to sit on the sofa at home, watch. A lot of times those young people get warehoused, right? Mm-hmm. But they wanted to cook. They wanted to say in what what food was bought because their nutrition teacher had taught them, etc. But just to turn around in that and just seeing the parents coming in, I didn't know Johnny could do that. I didn't know Susie could do that. At the end of the first year, and it's funny because I had sent the lady that was working on this back to the drawing board a couple times because I was like, can you add a little more rigor? I don't, I think we're assuming, too little. Well, at the end of the first year, she comes back to me and says, Dr. King, I hope you're not going to upset. We want to make some changes. I said, what's that? She said, the teachers want to know if they can redo the curriculum and make it more rigorous. And so these teachers that had spent their whole career working with young people like that didn't know what these young people could do. So really kind of mine again on all means all. Really, when we work with young people, we tend to place artificial ceilings on young people, whether it's opportunity youth, whether it's special needs, or even whether it's successful students. We tend to limit and place limits, and that really constrains them, and that really constrains the future. So that's kind of a pivot point for me, that work with special education young people.
That's an amazing story, and really that's true, that they'll rise to the level of expectations we have for them. Right. And we need to change what those expectations are. I love that.
And let them find their level, not us.
Not us,
place it.
right.
Also, one of the things that resonated with me, because we've experienced it within our organization, is transactional versus transformational relationships.
Yes.
And one of the things that I have discovered recently is that not only should we be open and be prepared to work with the people, or especially the youth that we're trying to work with, but they have to choose us.
Yes.
Because you can only transform people who allow you to work with them. So you can't help everybody. And you can't get offended when they don't choose you, they choose someone else. But I think from an adult standpoint, we want to encourage as many people as we can to be prepared to pour into these young minds and into these young hearts. There was a young man similar to Mr. Lofton. His mother brought him to me. He was about to commit suicide because of a relationship that was going bad, and ended up working with him for a few months. And after a few months, literally this past Sunday, he preached his first sermon. He's gotten accepted into the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and he's going to major in cybersecurity as a result of going through the Life Tech program. And now suicide is the last thing in his mind, but that's because he chose me. And there are a lot, I can give you a laundry list of kids who did not. So that's one thing that I pulled from what he said. Dr. G was amazing, but make sure that it's not a transactional relationship. Here are the services that we provide, and we're trying to fit you into a box. I want to help you be a better you. I want to help you succeed, and that is going to take us into a lot of different areas of their lives.
I agree, and I mean, one of the things that caught me, again, Dr. King, that you had said, and also Angel, that I think you said that I think are so important, one of them was, when you were recruiting for your new high schools, you were saying they were really happy that somebody cared, right? I think we make assumptions about whether or not they notice if adults are caring for them. Right. And they're so aware. We know you all are so aware. Oh my goodness. We know you all are so aware of those who care, and you can see the authenticity, you can feel the authenticity that's coming through. So I love that. And Angel, one of the things that I loved about what you said, and it's so powerful for us in this state when we are looking at strategies that often lead to language of polarization. You used the language when you were coming up with the idea around the promise supports for our opportunity youth. You used the language of, what would it look like if? And I love that language because that's the language that can allow for everybody to open their imagination. And so it helps for that really, it takes away the toxicity of us versus them and that kind of thinking that I think so often can polarize the conversations in the States. Thank you for doing that. So this is really terrific. I would like to open it up and see if any of our Texas Emerging Leader Board members or our youth leaders, past and present, had any questions that you would like to ask of our panelists. Okay, Haley, yeah.
Hi, my name's Haley, and I'm actually from Nacogdoches, Texas, so go to Lufkin all the time, got to visit the Target. But one question I had, and this is just within my own personal experience and then just conversations I've had with other young people, is we know that there are opportunities, there are resources, but we don't know where to look. We don't know where to find them. So I guess my question is, how are we doing? Like, how are we, or what efforts are we making so that, like, these resources are in our faces? Because I feel like there's an abundance, we just don't have knowledge of what they are because we're focused on simply surviving a lot of the time.
Who would like to take that? Anybody?
I don't mind just kind of sharing a little bit about what we're currently doing. That's actually a big point of conversation we had a couple of years ago where we said, well, there's a tons of resources, but where do they live? There's a lot of different sources of information. And again, I think working for local government, we've had a couple of initiatives to try to connect and share information overall. One, our city websites now have like information for like immigration services or human services, et cetera. So like there's information there that's being updated to make it an easier one-stop shop. But I will kind of encourage anyone to kind of visit a website called sacred.org in our community, which is SACRD. But really what it is, it's that there's actually staff that literally update resources on a daily basis. They're literally calling, are these organizations still open? Does this still exist? And you're able then to also kind of identify, like, I have this need or I have this that hasn't been met, and it's kind of like a quick questionnaire. You kind of plug in what you're needing, and then it'll generate a list of resources that you'll be able to access. And so it was something that actually in AmeriCorps Vista started like a couple of years ago for us, and now has actually blown to be its own nonprofit almost that operates. And we've supported some of that initiative. But then, of course, we also have, and I will add that Sacred even has a mental health component that you have a questionnaire that says, I'm feeling this way, I need support in certain areas. Maybe I need counseling, or I'm feeling alone, or I feel like thinking about suicide. Depending on the way you answer it, it can also generate certain resources that might be available. And overall, I think like at Next Level, we empower our life coaches to just be up to date with everything. We have staff members that actually know what's going on, and then they update our team to make sure that everything that we're sharing is really relevant and accessible to everyone.
That's great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll share very quickly. United Way is a great place to start. Also, look at local foundations. So, for example, in Nacogdoches, there's the Bright Foundation. Found out what types of organizations they support and what they do. In Lufkin, we have several foundations. TLO Temple Foundation, if you go to their website, you'll find out a lot of work, a lot of research that is being done, what organizations they support and why. Also, the local chambers of commerce. So you may have multiple. In Lufkin, we have 2. In Nacogdoches, I know you have 1 for sure. So those are great places to start. And then also within the school district, you may have social workers who work in the district who may have access to other resources. So I think those are 4 great places to start.
Yeah, and I think I would just first ditto from what I heard thus far in terms of the resources. But your health and human services, whether it be the city or the county or the state, 9 out of 10, they can identify nonprofits in your community, because at the end of the day, those nonprofits are the ones that's going to give a little bit more personal attention to the needs of the community, or 211 or 311, because in Austin, here we're listed, with all of the city of Austin, Travis County, state health and human services, so that's a good place to start. Then your churches, if the nonprofits are working with the church, they may not have a resource center in the church, but they can identify to you who they work with, especially even with the schools. And so, but I think, Googling to find out resources for and list that, what you're looking for, and there ought to be a number of things that come up in your city or your county that says what's operating and who's providing what service. That would be a place to start.
And I would also say, Haley, that what you see both at the Next Level Resource Center and the African American Youth Harvest Foundation is the one-stop shop approach, where there's a real recognition that it's really hard to go from one place to another place to another place to another place, both from a logistical standpoint, but also emotionally. It's just hard to be, kind of passed around and having to tell your story again and again and again. So to my mind, that's another strategy that a lot of nonprofits are really jumping into. And I just want to do a shout out to National League of Cities, because their re-engagement center approach is really centered on this idea of the one-stop shop. So thank you for asking such a great question.
Great
Were there
question.
any other questions from the Texas Emerging Leaders Board? Yes, Grace.
So I'm an opportunity youth with a 5-year-old son. I had him when I was 15, and I really liked how you said that they opened up a high school for the teen moms, so they can also do the dual credit, right? And I was wondering, for opportunity youth who have babies, who have children, what are some ways that you're making sure that you can end the generational cycle of it, so that it doesn't pass on to their babies too?
So,
Great question.
so in that particular case, and then in the district that you're talking about, first of all, we did initiate multi-generational approach. So several things. So it's an early college high school for teenage moms. Now it's a choice high school. They can stay at their home high school if they want. A lot of them like to come there because we have all the wraparound services. So we ultimately grew to the point, or evolved to the point where we provided on-site daycare, and then on-site early Head Start program for 0 to 3-year-olds, and then an on-site maternity and pediatric clinic with the doctor visiting that would come in on a rotating basis. And the other thing that we did in the district is we really kind of blew up and scaled up parental education. And so a lot of times we were working with the teenage mom, the baby, their mother, and even the grandmother. So we typically, on any typical semester, would have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 parents taking classes in the district, whether it's ESL, GED, welding, job readiness, parents teaching parents, job skills, entrepreneurship, all different kinds of things. So really trying to work with, because, when you talk about breaking the cycle of poverty and so forth, obviously working with a generation you can change. But when you can work with 2 or 3 or even 4 generations at the same time, you can really accelerate change. So that's important.
Thank you, Dr. King. I don't know if we can lift the lights a little bit. I can't quite see out into the audience if there are some questions, but we do have time for one or two questions if you want to kind of stand up and be really obvious. Okay, right there, yes, thank you.
And you had one over here too. Yeah.
Okay, is there one over? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for all of your work. My question is specifically for the representative from San Antonio, the Next Level Youth Opportunity Center. Can you tell us a little bit more about your funding model? How much did it cost? I appreciate that you got the funding from the city budget October 1st and opened by February. Super fast turnaround, especially for local government. So very impressive, but tell us a little bit more. Are there other private sector dollars that went into creating that? Is it fully public funded? If it is fully public funded, tell us a little bit more about the source of those funds. Anything you can do to help create that patchwork of funding for us would be useful.
Yeah. I will say that, off the top of my head numbers, but I want to say that it was maybe $1.2 million that it really took to kind of get us open. And it was, I will say that the city invested about $500,000 of it into basically hiring our nonprofit partners to provide the work. So basically the city put out a request for proposal and said, we have this challenge in our community. We had nonprofits apply, and then based on their experience, selected the organization that would partner with us. So the city really does it through consolidated funding in that process, where we've said, we've awarded this agency these funds, and so half goes to one agency, half goes to the other. And really, most of our dollars really go into that staffing for us. Through the consolidated funding, it goes to supporting the direct service providers. The other kind of $500,000 comes from really like United Way, or United Way has a huge, provides a huge contribution to support staff, but then also they provide funds to remove barriers. I want to say, just on average, giving you a rough number, about $40,000 of that goes to directly helping remove barriers for participants. And then for the city, I think we also invest about an additional about $200+ to really support city staff that is embedded in the Next Level program, to one, make sure that the model, we stay true to the model, but then also supporting our direct service providers with best practices and kind of these conversations at the national level. We bring that back to them. And then we also have funds for private events, celebration events, the fun stuff that generally we tend to overskip because we want to make sure that they're well-rounded. So I hope that helps.
Great, thank you. I think there was a question over here, yeah. Making sure you get to run the whole gamut.
I hear everyone keep talking about like trauma-based care and stuff. Coming from a grassroots organization, we don't have the funding to put therapy on site and stuff like that, but it is something that is very much needed in our community. So kind of like asking advice for that. I started like self-care Sundays. We host space, and we usually do like arts and crafts or like that kind of thing, so that we can take a break from like the community craziness. We were able to host our first retreat recently at the Schvitz. We're based out of Detroit, so it's like a bathhouse. We got to like bring people from the city who have never experienced like a spa and that kind of thing. But like we have had the request to have those kind of resources, but that becomes like, well, do we take funding from this place and like move that to provide that? So basically, I think I'm just asking like, what is the best way to provide that, and like how do we do that with the little funding that we do have?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a reality for so many of our nonprofits. Thank you for asking that. Is there anybody who'd like to take that?
Sure. You know, when you start talking about the various types of addressing various types of needs in a community, whether it be in a resource center or be it a church or apartment clubhouse or what have you, one of the things that we did, and if I piggyback on the other question, is we partner with so many different agencies to bring in those resources. A lot of times when you start out, you won't have the funding to be able to go and get funding, or you may not have the staff to be able to offer those services. But our strength, we started out as being able to partner. So I may not have a counselor, so I'm going to partner with you. You're going to be our counselor. I'm going to partner with you. You're going to be our case manager. You know, it's like with the city of Austin, if I piggyback off what you said. we said, okay, we need an employment agency. So we said, okay, you don't have to fund us. Just give me somebody 3 days a week. Give me somebody 4 days a week. And so we were able to fill a lot of needs and meet a lot of resources by asking them to bring resources to the table until we were able to garner support to go after grants until we built our model the way we wanted. And so that's why now, rather than saying we need $5 million worth of services, we partner with other nonprofits to bring in. So it's good to be able to partner and bring in those resources that will cut out a need for you having to try and fund everything yourself. At some point you will get it. But I would just say this here as it relates to the city and the county. Never put your eggs in one basket. Do not ever let one entity be your sole source of funding. You want to have, a multitude of different types of funding. So therefore, if you can have 6 to 8 different streams of funding, that way no one somebody controls you. So when it gets to that point, start partnering and having them to bring those resources in under one roof. And that's what we did in the many situations that we have now. And that's why we have 25 plus nonprofits all under one roof. We don't lose folks in transition, saying get on the bus and go here. Everything is right there local. And then we're able to put together what we call a CDC, a Community Development Coalition, to where we're going to go and work on getting a grant to fund everybody to where we can begin to strengthen once we get them all under one roof.
Thank you, Michael. And I want to take a moment. That was our last question. We are at a close. I wanted to read back to you part of the poem from Langston Hughes. I will not do it as well as that video, but I think it's really an important moment in the state of Texas, and I think this particular quote speaks directly to that. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real, life is free, equality is in the air that we breathe. That's what we hope for in the state of Texas. That is the vision and what we believe is happening in the community with each and every one of you who are working so hard in this state to make that reality the case for our young adults, but also for our families across the state of Texas. Please thank our panelists. Thank you so much for what you have done today.
Hey, say hi to Win Rosser for me. Win Rosser at Temple Foundation.
All right.
Oh, he's here, okay.
I think you have free time
We did a
now
lot of
until
work
the
together
next
when he was
session,
at
isn't
the
that
Greater
correct?
Texas Foundation, so.
Yes.
He's visited,
Excellent.
when I was superintendent,
Oh,
he visited the district
you
a
guys
number
were
of times and
fantastic.
brought visitors.